Harry Potter and the AI. Adventure 2. Chapter 1. Ron had been having a bad day. His sister Ginny had gone missing after spending most of her summer in Egypt getting new books, which he thought was a really cool idea. Even though it was illegal, he'd forgotten his wand and now he was stuck on one side of the corridor with an awful lot of Slytherins. While Ron himself had just lost his wand when they were attacked by Malfoy. He sighed, rubbing at the knot that was forming behind his left ear as his ears picked up voices coming from another direction. He glanced over his shoulder, but couldn't see anything because of the many people around him. "Hello there? Is anyone going to tell me what's going on?" The person walking up to him turned out to be someone with dark skin, black hair and green eyes. "Ron, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening either. It was Snape. We should go back to our dormitory. We can discuss it then." "Are you mad? How did this happen? Who are all these people?" His eyes widened, taking in everyone in the group, before he realized that the other boy meant the crowd he was surrounded in. "Don't look like that," said Snape. "You're being ridiculous. Just keep quiet and follow me." He started walking backwards into the crowd, pulling Ron along behind him. They managed to squeeze through, though Ron felt like they were moving towards the center of the pack. The voices got louder, and Ron could finally make out their source. It was Malfoy. As he walked past, Draco stopped abruptly, turning around to face them, sneering. "Why do we always end up here? First your father, and now you two." He spat in Snape's direction, his mouth still stretched into a smile. Snape began to cry. Ron took his hand and squeezed it tight. It didn't seem to do any good as Malfoy continued talking, continuing to mock them until they reached a door marked with a giant bronze eagle. He opened it and gestured inside. "After you, Mudblood." And so they entered the dungeon. Ron followed Snape cautiously, watching every corner and cranny he passed. They came to a stop in front of what looked like a classroom door, except it had a strange symbol carved in the wood. Snape reached forward to open the door, when Ron grabbed onto his sleeve. "No, no, what if we get caught? I'll die of embarrassment." Snape gave him a look that clearly said, "You're not dying today." He pulled away from Ron and opened the door. Ron followed him inside, closing the door behind him. The room was empty, save for a large desk in the middle of the room. There was a chair on each side of the desk, on top of which sat two identical-looking mannequins. One looked exactly like Hermione. The other was a little more human, almost like a child. The woman wore a plain white button-down shirt and pants, while the man wore an expensive-looking red robe. Both men were staring straight ahead, ignoring Snape or Ron completely. Snape stepped forward, his voice loud enough to carry across the classroom. "Hello, my name is Severus Snape, and this is my brother, Ronald Weasley. Our parents died in a car crash some years ago." Snape took another step closer, his tone becoming increasingly desperate. "Please help us, Professor Flitwick." Flitwick looked at Ron, then at Snape, then back at Ron, who shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "Well," he said, "this certainly isn't something I expected." "What do you mean?" asked Ron, unable to understand why Flitwick would hesitate. "Of course it's not nothing. They're our parents." He broke off. "You two are related?" Flitwick asked, confused by the situation, looking between Ron and Snape again. "Yeah," replied Snape. Ron frowned at Snape. Did he not know that Flitwick knew? Was it common knowledge among teachers? Or were teachers only supposed to talk about families if they actually existed in real life? Ron tried to think back to class, but his brain seemed short-circuited. Snape spoke again. "But I'm also your godfather, and we live together," Snape said. "So if you know where my sister is, please." He trailed off, waiting. Ron wanted to say something, but he was too stunned by everything. It seemed impossible, but somehow it was possible. The man sitting at Flitwick's desk was definitely his father. He looked so much like Harry that it was weird seeing another version. The differences were mostly in the shape of the nose, but the same piercing blue eyes. Ron swallowed hard. This must have been the reason Snape never had any brothers. The resemblance made sense. "Look, I really do need to find her." Ron nodded slowly. "Will you try to look for her with us?" "Well..." Flitwick cleared his throat nervously before continuing. "There is no guarantee that your sister is alive. I cannot give any guarantees. She might very well be dead and buried in this castle right now." He waved his arm to emphasize his words. "Such, I won't allow you to come anywhere near Hogwarts without a permit, and I cannot authorize you to use magic outside of school hours." He gave them both another stern look, which Ron returned with determination. So we will wait for a teacher. He rose from his chair. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a mountain of work to do. With a flourish, he exited the room. Ron watched him leave. Snape stared at the door. After several moments, he turned and walked toward it himself. He opened it quietly and slipped out. Ron watched him go. Then he turned around. He needed answers and fast. He had just come face to face with his mother. But what was he supposed to do now? He was a Gryffindor. Not sure how that would translate into an intelligent choice. The fact that Hermione hadn't shown up, yet probably had something to do with that. "Ron," Hermione called. "Is that you?" He whirled around, relieved that she had come back at least. "Sorry, I lost track of time." "You're right." She gave him a concerned look. "Your ears are bleeding. Are you okay?" Her tone changed from concern to concern. He shook his head. "I'm fine," he lied. "Come on, let's go back." She followed him into the room where the twins were sitting in chairs with legs crossed. They turned to watch them, grinning. "Hey, Ron." Fred winked at him. "Hey, guys," answered Ron, trying to ignore his twins' comment. The boys had always teased him about his love life, and he really hated when they teased him about girls. "What happened in there?" asked Fred, pointing at the door, obviously curious as to how the conversation went. "Nothing," answered Ron quickly. "Snape wanted to show us a classroom, and I lost my wand." Hermione gave him a disapproving look. "And you think it was funny to run off and leave me alone?" She glared at him and crossed her arms. "I'm sorry," Ron said, lowering his head in shame. "Oh, Ron," Hermione said, patting him on the head. "Just take me with you next time." She finished kissing Ron on the cheek. He chuckled slightly. It wasn't as if he would have minded the company anyway. Hermione seemed to notice this as she pulled her arm away from him and smiled at him, blushing slightly. "Let's go find your sister."